Minister, this question is to ask you for an update in relation to the report completed by the Child Maintenance Review Group, which I understand was furnished to you at Easter. If you might be able to tell us a little bit about that report, what stage it is at, and when it will be published.
And thank you, Deputy Curran, for raising this issue. In line with the Programme for Government Commitment, the Government established a Child Maintenance Review Group to examine certain issues in relation to child maintenance in Ireland. The group's terms of reference were to consider and make recommendations on the current treatment of child maintenance payments in my department, the current provisions regarding liable relatives managed by my department, and the establishment of a child maintenance agency in Ireland. As part of its work, the group conducted a public consultation process. Submissions were received from members of the public as well as members of the Oireachtas, NGOs and professional bodies. The group also examined the international position, where there are a variety of different approaches taken to these matters. The group's report was submitted to me in April. I am giving the report the careful consideration that such an important complex issue deserves, given that it relates to issues that are beyond the scope of the social welfare system. I am also consulting government colleagues. Once the report has been fully considered, my intention is to bring it to government before the end of this year, at which time a decision regarding the publication date will be made. As lone parents continue to be a group with a high risk of poverty, I am pleased to provide a number of measures in Budget 2023 which will be of benefit to them. Recipients of one-parent family payment and job seekers transitional payment will be amongst those who receive a double weekly payment in October and a 100% Christmas bonus in December. Lone parents will also receive a double payment of child benefit in November. Approximately half of the people who received the €500 cost of living lump sum payment, which will be made to recipients of the working family payment in November, will be lone parents. I have also provided for a €40 increase in the weekly income thresholds for the work and family payment from January. Lone parents will also benefit from the increase of €12 in the weekly rate of working age payments in January. The rate of increase for a qualified child will increase to €42 and €50 per week in respect of a qualified child aged under and over 12 respectively.
And as you've said, we know that lone parent families are in deep poverty, and they have very high levels across the board, from at risk of poverty to risk of deprivation, in fact living in deprivation, experiencing deprivation, and also the consistent poverty rate, which remains far too high and far higher than it should be. In any case at all. You will also know lone parent organisations, both One Family and Spark, have voiced deep disappointment in relation to the budget. A lot of the measures you've outlined there, including child benefit and working family payment, aren't specific to lone parent families, and aside from the weekly increase they will see, along with all other social welfare recipients from January, there was nothing targeted at them, albeit the levels of poverty that they experience. In relation to the report, I'm disappointed that you've had the report since April and we still haven't seen it, and now we're not going to see it perhaps until the end of the year at the very earliest. Is there any chance that that can be moved, given the organisations are obviously waiting for this report?
Say that lone parents will get support, a considerable support as part of the social welfare package that we announced just 2 weeks ago. Lone parents, for example, a lone parent with 2 children, they'll get 2 double payments of the one parent family payment. That'll be €416, that's before Christmas. If they're a working family, they'll get the €500 working family payment. They'll get an extra €280 on child benefit. A €12 increase in the one-parent family payment from the 1st of January, and that's an extra €624 over the year. So that's an extra €1,820 going into their pocket as a result of this budget. Over a year, that works out at an extra €35 per week. Deputy, I know you have a strong interest in this area regarding child maintenance review, and you've raised it with me on a number of occasions. In fairness to the group and the chair, Judge Catherine Murphy, they took about 18 months or so to look at this. They went through all the issues in great detail, and they invited submissions from all the stakeholders, and it's clear from their report that they gave a lot of consideration to all of the different issues. and there's quite a lot of issues here, both in social protection space and also crossing into the Department of Justice. The group looked at all of those issues and they did give them detailed consideration. I've given the report detailed consideration over the last few months, and I will act on this report, and I want to do that.
But I just would urge you again, Minister, the report is done. You've had since April considering it, and I do believe you will move on it, and that is welcome. But I think it would be really good if we could all see the report, particularly those organisations, because up to now, and certainly up until this group was established in 2020, there hasn't been that sense of urgency around child maintenance, and the establishment of a child maintenance service can only be a positive thing. We know that when maintenance is paid, it can play a role, and all evidence shows it can play a role in lifting children in lone parent families out of poverty. That in itself should be enough to move very quickly and swiftly in relation to this, and it is something that Spark and One Family, and I do want to mention One Family because they will be celebrating 50 years today, and I want to commend them and Spark for the work that they do, but they are very anxious to see this report, as am I, and I think now that the report is complete, the good work has been done, it is only of positive and of benefit for that report to be published sooner rather than later.
Thank you, and I'd like to also wish One Family well as they celebrate a significant anniversary. Can I just say that I have met with the chair of this, Judge Catherine Murphy. I spoke to her. She's a very formidable, she's a very thorough lady, and that conversation has been very useful to me. I've spoken with my colleagues, Minister McEntee, also with Minister Roderick O'Gorman, because obviously there are issues here in respect of both the Department of Justice, the Department of Children, and I can say honestly, Deputy, it's not my intention to delay this, but you'll appreciate there are major issues here. I want to get it right, and that's the most important thing at the end of the day. And I do have to also look at consult with my government colleagues, and I know the situation. We've talked about this before. There's nothing worse than somebody who is entitled, that should be paying maintenance. They pay a week, miss another, pay another week, miss 5 or 6 weeks. It's a mess. I know that. It's terrible for the person that's dependent on that money. I do want to help here, and I want to see how we can improve things. And to be fair, it has been a busy couple of months between pensions, budgets and auto-enrolment and the cost of living. But it's definitely, I'm dealing with it now.
Moving on now to the second priority question. Oireachtas Cathilberry.
Margaret Laskin Corla, and good morning, Minister. Minister, my question this morning has to do with the Citizens Information Service, and particularly what the plan is to deal with volunteer staff. There's a lot of rumours and a lot of concerns floating around over the last couple of months, so perhaps the Minister might use this opportunity this morning just to clarify the Government's position in that regard. Thank you very much, Minister.
Thank you, Laskin Corla, and thank you, Deputy Berry, for raising this. As Minister, I absolutely recognise and value the good work carried out by volunteers, and I have been very clear to the Citizens Information Board that it is important that the voluntary ethos of the Citizens Information Service should be protected, and the skills of its volunteers should be utilised to the maximum extent possible. CIB has also publicly acknowledged the centrality of volunteers in delivering and supporting CIB-funded services, and considers their continued contribution to be vital in ensuring that citizens' information remains an independent, trusted source of information, advice and advocacy. Having said this, it is also important to recognise and protect the statutory independence of the Citizens Information Board and the separation between it and the 8 independent regional Citizens Information Service companies which it funds and which operate the national network of citizen information centres on its behalf. Section 7.1 of the Corlia Act charges CIB with the provision of independent information, advice and advocacy services. This is to ensure that individuals receive impartial advice and access to accurate and comprehensive information relating to social services. This statutory independence is also to ensure that government cannot unduly influence the information or advice offered by CIB, nor dictate how it should provide its services. Similarly, each CIS company is a separate company in its own right. So those are the 8 regional companies. They're governed by a voluntary board of directors. They're subject to meeting service standards set by CIB. These 8 companies are responsible for decisions on the delivery of services in their own regions. Any operational changes or decisions are therefore a matter for Citizens Information Board and the independent boards, and as Minister I cannot direct them regarding operational decisions.
Thank you, Minister, for your response. And I agree entirely. It's an excellent service, independent, valued, and crucially, it's accessible as well. I use it myself. I refer a lot of constituents to that service, and I presume every deputy in the House does similarly. I even have the Newbridge office on speed dial if I ever want to run something by them in relation to a complex case. I do take your point as well in relation to the importance of the autonomy of that service. But there was a press release about 5 weeks ago from the board, and they mentioned that they were going to set up an independent review. Do we know anything about that independent review? Who's running it? When will it be started? When will it be finished? Or does the Minister have any information to enlighten us? Thanks very much, Minister.
Thanks, Deputy. Sorry, I was just getting on to telling you about that, and then I ran out of time. However, I have met the chairperson and the CEO of CIB seeking further information, and following that meeting, CIB initiated an independent review of its volunteer strategy. This independent review will consult with current and past volunteers and other important stakeholders. It's expected that it will be concluded in the coming months, and its recommendations will directly inform CIB's new 3-year strategy 2023 to 2025. And can I just say that my background is in the credit union sector, so nobody values the community and voluntary ethos more than I do, and that's why, on foot of concerns raised with me by deputies, I did meet with the CEO and the chair. I recognise the good work carried out by the volunteers, and I've been very clear that to CIB that people who have given up their time down through the years deserve to be treated with respect, and I think that's the very least they deserve. Following my meeting with them, CIB have now, as I said, confirmed the terms of reference for this independent review, and it will engage with internal and external stakeholders, including current and past. And actually, what I've also done is, I have appointed a new member to the board of CIB, and that person is also a member of Volunteer Ireland.
That's good to hear as well, Minister. I appreciate the update. Look, I suppose my own personal view, and I think it's shared by most deputies here, is the Citizens Information Service is an excellent service, not in spite of the volunteers, but because of the volunteers. Many of them have a wealth of knowledge from their careers, be it in tax or be it in social welfare, and they do have that crucial accessibility function as well. So look, I welcome the review. I look forward to reading of its findings, but I would recommend as much as possible to make maximum use of this crucial cohort of volunteers. They're half man and woman and half encyclopedia. They really have an encyclopedic knowledge of the services, and we should maintain and maximise and optimise their use. Thanks very much, Minister.
Thank you. Well, can I just be very clear? I want to see volunteers back. CIB assured me that the contribution of volunteers continues to be highly valued. The role of the volunteer is still seen as central to the delivery of the service, and volunteers have been returning on a phased basis since mid-2022. To date, CIB advised me that 120 volunteers have returned to support the delivery of the Citizens Information Centres across the country, and there are some volunteers who haven't come back post-COVID, and it's important that we make sure that there are services for the people, because that's the most important thing, that there are people there to answer their questions. So what I would say is that there are, of course, the eight regional CIS companies. They are all independent. Some seem to be getting on with their work without any issue, and there seems to be problems with others. CIB is engaging with the 8 regional companies in relation to the continued return of volunteers, and I want to see that happen, and I will be keeping a close eye on this. So I'll just leave it at that.
Moving on to the third priority, Oireachtas Claire Curran.
Please provide an update on the processing of additional needs payments, which are obviously really important in the midst of this cost of living crisis, and demand, I presume, will increase, and I'm sure your department expect demand to increase further as we come into the winter period. Thank you.
Gurmagat, and thank you, Deputy, for raising this. Additional needs payments are intended to assist people with essential once-off exceptional expenditure which a person could not reasonably be expected to meet out of their weekly income. In 2022, to the end of September, almost 66,000 applications for additional needs payments were processed and awarded. That's an increase of just under 60% on 2021 figures. This rise in the number of applications reflects in part the positive measures the Department has implemented, including 2 major advertising campaigns to increase awareness of the payments. In the region of 63% of all applications are being finalised within 4 weeks. As part of the decision process, there is a need to verify household income and expenditure and assess whether or not the expenditure in respect of which the additional needs payment is requested is essential. Where an application is complete and accompanied by the required documentation, it is generally processed in a matter of days. However, where an application is not finalised within this timeframe, the delay is generally due to additional information or documentation being requested from the person to support their application. It is important to note that where my officials are aware that a client has an urgent or immediate need, every effort is made to ensure that the person in question receives a prompt service, usually on the same day. The Department has taken a number of steps to increase service capacity, including the introduction of a national community welfare service free phone line, meaning clients don't have to attend an office in person to make a claim, the rostering of staff to ensure there is a full-time community welfare officer presence in all of our 50 offices nationwide, the establishment of a back office support team to take on the more routine administrative tasks associated with claim processing. So that means you can free up frontline staff, and the community welfare officers to deal directly, so it lets them deal directly with customers on their claims. In addition, the Department is well advanced in the development of an online claim option. So, okay.
And firstly, I'm glad to see that the online option is being progressed, because I think that will be important. And it is something I've raised with you previously, and it would be welcome, because perhaps it would allow a person to ensure they upload and provide every bit of information before they can actually submit the application, and then you don't have an over and back. I was alarmed in September when I was advised that 95% of applications at that point were being processed within 5 to 8 weeks, which is far, far too long. 4 weeks, 63%, that's welcome. Obviously, times have improved, and I welcome that. But you're still looking at another 37% that aren't in relation to those 4 weeks, and 4 weeks is a long time to wait. If you have a bill or if you need to replace something in your home, it is a long time to wait. I have raised with you many times in relation to community welfare officers. I understand they're in intro centres, which for people living in rural areas can be a number of miles away. Recently, the local family resource centre raised with me the issue of domestic violence survivors and people in those situations who are really vulnerable in relation to getting to an intro centre, and also not having that option to walk into a local service to see the CWO as they could before.
Okay, thank you. Well, first of all, Deputy, can I just say if somebody has an urgent need, they will be seen to as a matter of urgency and immediately, and in some cases it can be the same day or next day payment. But I can just say that, only a few months ago you were asking me about the fall off in these payments, and at that stage you were saying we weren't doing enough to promote the payment and there were not enough people knew about it. So it's sort of the opposite now. So you're telling me that too many people are applying and we can't keep up. So just to be clear, I want people who need these payments to get them, because that's what they're there for. And earlier this year I made a number of changes to try and simplify the process and make it easier for people. We set up a national helpline phone number, we developed new income guidelines aligned with those for the work and family payment and put these up on our website. We got rid of the 30-hour rule, we ran 2 major public awareness campaigns. There were radio adverts, there were social media adverts constantly going out to raise awareness and get the message out. And I'm sure you heard those yourself. And that campaign and those changes have had the effect we wanted. More people are aware of the payment and more people are applying, and that's what we are here to do. We are here to help.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I don't think that's very fair. What I wanted to see was the ramping up of those supports to ensure that people knew they were there to access them. And of course, if numbers are low earlier on in the year, February, March, between 4,000 or 5,000, then there was concern. And you did all of that work in relation to advertising and campaigning. That's what I wanted to see, and that's welcome. But when you're ramping things up and demand is obviously going to increase, we need to make sure people aren't waiting up to 8 weeks for a payment, which they were in September. Like, if you're waiting 2 months, 95% of applications in September were finalised between 5 to 8 weeks. That's my issue, and I think it's a very fair issue to raise, because if you're encouraging people to apply for something, which I've asked you to do, and I've no issue with that, then people need to be able to get that support in a timely manner. These are supposed to be emergency payments, and I think it's very fair to raise that with you. And I did put forward the idea of putting it online, again, not to complain about fall off, but to ensure people had every opportunity to access that support. And just lastly, I want to ask you about the comprehensive review that was undertaken in 2021 of all services and activities delivered by your network of local offices, which came as news to me. Might you just be able to tell us if that's a review that will be published? Thank you.
Deputy, just to say, you know, when you get all the information on an application straight away, they can be dealt with very fast, and I think you'll appreciate that. Where additional information is needed, that holds things up a bit, and we know that. So, you know, it's taxpayers' money. We just can't throw it out. We have to have some checks and balances. And if they were dragging their heels, you wouldn't see, you know, the huge increase in awarded payments that we have seen. If additional staffing resources are needed, my department won't be found wanting. We did that during the pandemic. We moved staff around to meet demand, and there are pressures when there are pressures in certain areas. We have community welfare officers in 51 intro centres all across the country. They can talk to people over the phone. They can meet them in the local branch. They can even arrange to meet them in their own home by appointment if that's what's needed. And as I said, we're looking at setting up the online system so people can apply directly for an additional needs payment online. But in fairness, the staff and the community welfare officers in the Department of Social Protection, they certainly didn't let us down during the pandemic, and they're not going to let us down now either, because they want to help people, and that's what they are here for. I'll come back to you. Oh, sorry, I ran out of time. I'll come back to you on the other issue in a minute.
I think that concluded that question, unless that was the end. Yeah, that was the end. Yeah. So we're moving on now to Dr. Joan Collins.
Yeah, thanks, last caller. To ask the Minister for Social Protection when she will publish the Child Maintenance Review, which the Minister received in April, and there was an expectation from lone parent groups that it would have been made public before the summer recess, and to ask the Minister, have you money in the pot in relation to implementing any recommendations coming out of the review later in the year?
Thank you, and thank you, Deputy, for raising this. In line with the programme for government commitment, the Government established a child maintenance review group to examine certain issues in relation to child maintenance in Ireland. The group's terms of reference were to consider and make recommendations on the current treatment of child maintenance payments in my department, the current provisions regarding liable relatives managed by my department, and the establishment of a child maintenance agency in Ireland. As part of its work, the group conducted a public consultation process. Submissions were received from members of the public as well as members of the Oireachtas, NGOs and professional bodies. The group also examined the international position, where there are a variety of different approaches taken to these matters. The group's report was submitted to me in April. I'm giving the report the careful consideration that such an important and complex issue deserves. Given that it relates to issues that are beyond the scope of the social welfare system, I'm also consulting government colleagues. Once the report has been fully considered, my intention is to bring it to government before the end of this year, at which time a decision regarding the publication date will be made. As lone parents continue to be a group with a high risk of poverty, I am pleased to provide a number of measures in Budget 2022 which will be of benefit to them. Recipients of one parent family payment and job seekers transitional payment will be amongst those who receive a double weekly payment in October and a 100% Christmas bonus in December. Lone parents will also receive a double payment of child benefit in November. approximately half of the people who received the €500 cost of living lump sum payment, which will be made to recipients of the work and family payment in November, will also be to lone parents. I've also provided for a €40 increase in the weekly income threshold for the work and family payment from January. Lone parents will also benefit from the increase of €12 in the weekly rate of working age payments in January. The rate of increase for a qualified child will increase to €42 and €50 per week in respect of a qualified child aged under or over 12 respectively. These rates will have increased by €6 for under 12s and by €10 for over 12s over the last 3 budgets.
Minister, this review was warmly welcomed by lone parents and the organisations One Family and Spark, and they were very keen to process the review. The fact that you're saying now won't be published until possibly the end of the year, or maybe early next year, have you made provision within your own budget in relation to implementing any recommendations that will come out of that review? Because most lone parents were hoping that there'd be some that there would have been recognition of the fact that the maintenance can be so erratic from the point of view of receiving it. And I think the point, Minister, is that the RSI have said now, and also St Vincentian, that when you strip out all the one-off payments, which are welcome, but no one's going to refuse them, that the actual social welfare rates are below inflation, and people find themselves poorer, even though next year, even though money hasn't been pumped into them. Minister.
Thank you, Deputy. Well, just to say, the ESRI estimates that the combination of Budget 2023 and cost of living supports will protect most households from inflationary pressures over the coming year, more so than if welfare rates alone had been increased in line with inflation. They concluded that the means, sorry, I can't read my own writing now. The means will substantially cushion real incomes from that. This means this will substantially cushion real incomes from across society. So they have said that it will make a difference, and that what we have done in this budget will help households deal with the inflationary pressures. Now, just come back to the issue of the child maintenance review. I've met with the chair, I've spoken to her, and she has certainly went through it in detail. I found the conversation very useful. I've spoken to my colleagues, Minister McEntee and Minister O'Gorman, because there are issues in respect of both the Department of Justice and the Department of Children. I'm having more discussions with them in the coming days, and I'll be bringing a report to Government in the next few weeks.
Thanks, Minister. You do understand that there's a sort of sense of urgency within lone parents and the groups representing them, that this be processed as quickly as possible. And again, I'll ask the question, have you made any provision in your budget from the point of view of the recommendations coming out of this report or review? I don't know whether they would be costs related in relation to payments or whatever, setting up a one-stop shop or whatever comes out of it. But I will say that the ERSI, I read a piece saying that next year, one-off payments are welcome, they do have an impact, but the basic welfare rate hasn't kept up with inflation and will have an impact on, and people will have less money come, say, March, April of next year. And also they St Vincentian also said that in their report that lone parents with a child in primary and secondary school will be €78.59 short next year of the adequate levels of income.
Thank you. Well, Deputy, I suppose we can't take any of these things in isolation. It's in its totality. So it's the lump sum and it's the increases. And when you take all of those together, it clearly says that that it will protect the most vulnerable households from inflationary pressures over the coming year, and that's what they said. But you have to take the whole lot together. Going back to the child maintenance review, I genuinely, and I know Deputy Curran as well, we genuinely want to make progress on this, because most of the people that are affected by child maintenance, or the lack of it, or they're not getting it, is women, and we know that. So I do genuinely want to move this on. We've had a lot of things in the last couple of months with pensions, budgets, auto enrolment, cost of living, but this is my priority now, to deal with this issue. But I want to get it right. I genuinely do, because we've looked at models in other countries, and while on the surface they might appear to be the right solution, when you start to dig in a bit, there's things in that might not work well here. So at the end of the day, what we want to do is make sure that when there's a maintenance order given, that somebody's supposed to pay the other parent for keeping the child, that money gets to them every week.
Thank you very much for your cooperation. I was going to say the brevity is because of the preponderance of female contributions, but that wouldn't be fair to Deputy Burry, who was extremely brief. So we're going to move on to Keshtin Ella. I give a discretion in relation to question 1, which is grouped, and the Deputy is here. We'll leave it till later and come back to it. Question, Deputy, no. Then we'll move on to the next. Let me see. Paul Donnelly.
Margaret Last Concorda. I wonder, could I ask the Minister for her views on the delay in issuing PPS numbers from the Department, and what plans in place to tackle this delay?
PPSNs are issued either automatically when a birth is registered, or an application to a person who does not already have a PPSN, for example a new worker arriving into the state. On average, it's now taking about 1 month or 31 days to issue a PPSN on application. 90% of applications are processed within 2 months. While the Department is working to reduce processing times, the actual time to process PPN needs to be considered in the context of the extraordinary increase in the number of applications for PPSNs received so far in 2022. The care that must be taken to ensure PPSNs are only issued to people who can properly validate their identity, and the arrangements that the Department has in place to process PPSNs in the case of urgency. Apart from the PPSNs automatically allocated as a result of birth registration, my Department has processed over 179,000 applications to the end of September this year. This is an increase over 113,000, or 173% over the same period in 2021. My Department has already allocated more PPSNs in the first 9 months of this year than were allocated in total last year. Separate to the arrival of Ukrainian refugees, my Department has also seen an increase of over 40,000 applications from people arriving in Ireland to take up employment, reflecting the strong economic recovery as we exit COVID. While the PPSN application process is relatively straightforward, delays can occur where incomplete applications are submitted, or there are problems with the quality of documents provided. When this occurs, the applicant is contacted by my Department to help progress their application. The Department has also established arrangements with other public bodies, employer groups and representative bodies to expedite applications in cases of urgency. Given the significant increase in application volumes, the Department has trained additional staff on PPSN work, and resources have been supplemented by overtime. This reallocation of resources does, however, need to be managed, taking account of other work pressures, including recent increase in applications for additional needs payments. My Department therefore sought and received an increased staff allocation of 289 as part of the estimates process, and is already in the process of recruiting these staff. Thank you.
Can I thank the Minister for his reply, and accept the difficulties that have been experienced by the Department over the last 6 or 7 months, particularly in relation to the Ukrainian crisis. And I'd like to commend the workers in the Department who have dealt with very, very difficult circumstances. But I'd just like to quote one. Is an Irish citizen who was working in the UAE and who had come home to get a job. We were asking our people to come home and come back and contribute to our society. So he was from the north, had come back and had looked for a PPS number, and was told that there would be he was 3 months waiting on the PPS number, even though I was told that there was a 6-week delay. So he's out of work for those 3 months. And I absolutely appreciate the fact that there's extreme difficulties within the department, and I do acknowledge that there's been extra overtime and there's been people trained up. So I do hope that it's going to be resolved fairly soon.
Deputy, I suppose I've outlined the reaction the department has taken in terms of increased staffing, overtime hours, moving other staff from other sections as well. I mean, I think an important message to send out this morning as well is that for people who are applying, to take their time, because if they rush it and get it wrong, it can delay their application process significantly. So take the time, scan the documents carefully, fill out the form completely. In terms of the additional documents and supporting information that needs to go with it, just make sure that you've ticked all the boxes and the checklist to see everything that's there, because on the other side there are delays because people send in incomplete applications. And the other side of that is as well, if an incomplete application is sent in, the department will send the person an email. And very often that email isn't spotted, so I would say to people as well, check your inboxes, check your other folders in your email as well, because there may be a notification from the department there that you need to come back to them with clearer or additional information.
Deputy Minister, the report. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going back to question 6. Oireachtas Rory or Muricu.
Look, I want to ask the Minister if additional resources are being given to intro centres, particularly community welfare officers, our offices, in order to deal with the huge additional requests that we're all aware of for supplementary welfare, additional needs payments, exceptional needs payments, and if you can make a statement on the matter, because there's becoming a particularly big backlog, even in relation to its holding up people who are on the housing list who are looking to move into new accommodation, but they can't get those payments.
Gurmahigut, and I thank the deputies for raising this matter, and I propose to take questions 6 and 10 together. The delivery of crucial community welfare services to meet the challenges and needs of citizens across the country is a priority for my department and for me. I want to be absolutely clear that the department continues to provide access to local community welfare officers in our public offices across the country and will continue to do so. Community welfare staff also attend local clinics and are available to attend at other locations, including the client's home if necessary. In addition, staffing levels have been maintained in the community welfare service nationwide in recent years, even during times when demands on the service decreased significantly. And this reflects my commitment to continue to support the delivery of locally based services to citizens. There are currently over 400 staff working in the community welfare service throughout the country, with a permanent community welfare officer present available at all times during working hours in over 50 of the department's public offices. These staff have processed and paid 66,000 additional needs payments to the end of September, an increase of about 60% in 2021 levels, as well as managing applications for the other supplementary welfare allowance schemes. My department has introduced a number of measures this year with the aim of increasing the capacity of the service and modernising and improving how it operates. These include the introduction of a national community welfare service free phone line, meaning clients don't have to attend the office in person to make a claim. The rostering of staff to ensure there is a full-time community welfare officer present in all of our over 50 offices nationwide. The establishment of a back office support team to take on the more routine administrative tasks associated with claim processing, freeing up frontline community welfare officers to meet customers and process their claims. In addition, the department is well advanced in the development of an online claim option. These changes mean that the Community Welfare Service is in a stronger position than it would otherwise have been to respond to that significant 60% increase in service demand. For example, 75% of calls to the National Free Phone Line are dealt with and the claim decided without the client ever having to attend a public office. In addition, the department is taking steps to allocate additional staff to the Community Welfare Service function, having received an increased staffing allocation during the estimates process, and I expect recruitment for these posts to begin shortly, and it is our plan, or it's the department's plan, to allocate an additional 80 staff to this service.
I welcome the fact that we're now looking at the recruitment of 80 staff. I don't think there's anybody who has been in a constituency office for any party over the last while that won't consider that that's an absolute necessity. I suppose my follow-up question on that is just what the timeline is in relation to it. I'm not taking away from the huge work that has been done by community welfare officers and those in the back office admin at this point in time, but just the fact is there is a huge backlog. In fairness, some of that is down to the fact that we're in the middle of a cost of living crisis. People are under severe pressure. Obviously, the advertising campaign that has been carried out has had a huge impact. And in fairness, that's like we've dealt with a considerable amount of people who have been putting in absolutely genuine claims. I'll be honest, occasionally you do come across people that you're fairly sure shouldn't or wouldn't, shouldn't be making these particular claims. We generally try and deal with them at our office so they don't clog up the social protection offices.
Thank you, Minister. And I listened to your reply earlier on today as well, and earlier on this morning to Deputy Curran. And I do want to thank and acknowledge the work done by the community welfare officers. I do know that the ones that I certainly know are going above and beyond in trying to meet the needs of people in a really desperate situation. So I welcome the measures that you're saying that you've outlined there, but I suppose I'd want to know how long is the recruitment process going to be, because I'd be concerned that that might take weeks or even months. And what are the target times? So in terms of by Christmas, can we be in a situation where the time is much reduced than it is now? And on the online system, how quickly will that be up and running? And when you say people don't have to go into the office, maybe explain that a bit more, because what's happening as well in terms of people trying to gather bank statements, it's not the easiest thing in the world to do, and it can take quite a long time as well, and particularly for people who have literacy issues and people who are extremely marginalised. My real concern is in how they can access as smoothly and as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, just to say that agreement has been reached with the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform for an additional 289 staff for the department, that's for the whole department, and of whom about 80 will be allocated to Community Welfare Service. These staff will be at all grades and will increase the capacity of the community welfare officers to focus on making decisions on complex applications and meeting with claimants locally as required. So, as I said, we have approval, they're going ahead, that there's a process there and it has to be gone through, but they're going to obviously increase resources in that area as quickly as possible. And just to say that, I have been this is the state safety net. You've heard me say this many times, and we want people to have access to this money, but we have to put checks in place, and you can understand that too, because not every application is always going to qualify. Sorry, is my time up?
I wasn't running so
okay, sorry.
I'm confusing you.
No, you're right. So, as I say, not every application is going to qualify. So there's a lot of applications coming in, and but we have made a number of changes to try and simplify the process, make it easier for people to access the additional needs payment. We have the National Helpline phone number. We developed the new income guidelines aligned with those for the work and family payment. And we put these up on our website while still ensuring that the local community welfare officer has discretion. We got rid of the 30-year rule, 30-hour rule. We ran two major public awareness campaigns, and there was radio adverts, and there was a lot of social media, and I know you've welcomed that. So the campaign has worked. There's more people aware that this is available to help them out, and there's more people applying for it. And when you look at the end of September, we have approved over 66,000 applications, and that's a 60% increase on the same period last year. So there's a massive increase by any yardstick, and in fairness, the community welfare officers around the country, they are doing a great job to help people, and we all know that, and they help them out when they need it.
Look, I think, yeah, if we could just get some sort of update in relation to what the timeline would be in employing those 80 people. And the other question again is, what are we looking at the target times in being able to actually to process the claims? Because we all get the huge work that's been done, and that's the reason why more staff is being looked for. But like, Louth County Council informed us that it's in around 6 weeks now in relation to applications for white goods and floors, and so that is, you know, that can hold up people on the housing list in relation to moving on, and that can create a difficulty even in relation to, sometimes we're looking for those the properties that are being vacated, that they become available, because obviously it's like hen's teeth at the minute, you know, with a housing crisis. So anything that can be done.
Thank you, Minister, for your response, and I hope that things will be speeded up. I think the message that needs to go out from here today is that people shouldn't wait until the very last moment before contacting the community welfare officer, that they should know that there will be at some length of time. I'd also want to ask you around people. I'm finding an awful lot, but has been for a long time, even before the most immediate pressures, is people who cannot afford to get to hospital appointments. So if you're in Mayo and you have to try and get transport to your hospital appointment, there's no public transport, that's a real need there, that can wipe out somebody's whole income for the week if they're on a social welfare payment or whatever. So I would ask for as much flexibility as possible to be around those payments so that people can get to vital hospital appointments, and that they can get the money that they need for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, just can I say, if there's any you know, particular long delays in any particular area, bring them to my attention, and I'm happy to address them, and just to see if there's a problem there that we need to sort out. You're right, Deputy, when you say, you know, people shouldn't wait till the last minute to go to the community welfare officer. If they could at all, you know, if they think there's going to be a problem, they should put in their application as to what it would be. So the average is 4 weeks, but if there's an urgent need, it'll get dealt with straight away. And, you know, I was at an event there last week. MABs were celebrating 30 years in existence, and you know, I was just talking to some of the MABs people, and they were saying that, you know, there's a good relationship between MABs and the community welfare officers, and when MABs say, you know, they need the help, they usually just get the payment straight away. So maybe there are other ways as well to approach this, because some people have particular difficulties, and if they're concerned about it, they should go to the local money advice budgeting service. Now, if I have 2 seconds, I know that Deputy Curran asked me about a review, and I just wanted to answer that as well as part of the question. I didn't have time, I ran out of time the last time. It's about a review in 2021. Just to say that, as is the case with any large customer service organisation, that the department is constantly reviewing and refining its operational procedures and management structures. As part of this ongoing process, the department made some changes to how it organised the processing of the Intro Claims Centre in 2021 to take account of remote working, blended working developments, and to ensure the staff workloads could be balanced. It also made some changes to management reporting lines. The review did not involve any changes to Intro Centre locations or services available to the public at Intro Centres. As is normal practice, these changes were discussed with staff unions and have been in place since January of 2022. Ongoing regular reviews of internal structure and processes are normal in any operational environment. These routine operational reviews do not involve any change to customer benefits or entitlements, but represent normal business process change and refinement, and it's not the practice to publish internal reviews.
We're going on just according to the questions as they're laid out. So the next question is question 7, in the name of Oireachtas, Jennifer Mernan O'Connor.
Thank you, Minister. My question is to ask what are the plans to review the CE schemes? Thank you.
of the important role that CE and other schemes play, and Minister Humphreys and I wish to support them the best we can. In addition to providing valuable occupational experience and training as a stepping stone to employment for people who are unemployed, schemes such as CE also provide important and, in many cases, essential services to their local community. Thankfully, given the strong labour market performance, the number of unemployed people dependent on social welfare payments continues to fall. While this is very welcome, it also means that the number of candidates available to CE schemes also falls. This creates an obvious challenge. Having said that, it is not an insurmountable challenge, and working together with CE sponsors, we can and have devised changes that will help the schemes to continue to support their local communities. For example, following engagement with scheme sponsors, Minister Humphreys and I announced a number of reforms and enhancements to CE last December and again in June of this year. These changes included a provision to allow CE participants who reach 60 years of age to remain on CE until they reach state pension age. We also updated the baseline year for CE to enable other placements to be extended. More recently, as part of Budget 2023, we announced an increase of €5 per week, or just over 22%, in the weekly CE allowance. This increase is in addition to the increase in the core social welfare payments of €12 per week, meaning the minimum payment on CE will amount to €247.50 per week. This is the lowest rate of payment, and people with children or other dependents receive additional payments, which are also increasing as part of our budget measures. We also changed the candidate referral process. Schemes have been given new flexibility to allow them to directly recruit eligible candidates to fill 30% of places, but are also mandated to accept and place at least 60% of people referred by in trio. This is to ensure that places do not go unfilled when there are candidates available from the live register. Schemes have also been granted flexibility to extend individual placements and to retain existing participants in cases where no replacement is immediately available.
Thank you, and thank you, Ministers. And look, I believe the CE schemes are designed to help those in long-term unemployment or those who are disadvantaged or find it impossible to get mainstream work to have a job in their local communities. They provide with childcare help, they do elderly care, they can do drug rehabilitation services. Anyone in the CE scheme, workers, €25 extra is a modest increase in the budget, but as a result, it's very difficult to get people to participate in this scheme. I have raised this both in the Dáil and again recently at our party thinking when we were in Mullingar. These programmes not only benefit participants but also the community by providing essential services. However, the scheme does not pay enough for providing such great work in the community, and I can only say this, Ministers, it's not fit for purpose. I am advocate for this to be changed. Fianna Fáil has always been a strong supporter and advocate of CE schemes. It's one of the first we started in my own area, but I firmly believe that that €5 increase in the budget was absolutely unacceptable.
Thank you, Deputy. It's been a while since there was an increase in the top-up on the CE top-up itself, so while we'd all like to have more than €5 going on it, that's what we got this year. We would have all liked more. I do disagree with you vehemently that CE is not fit for purpose. CE is one of the most impactful and useful schemes both to individuals and communities across the country. And of all the schemes that government supports, I think it's one of the best. It manages to do those two very important functions of giving people another option in life who are quite far from the labour market. It opens up pathways to people that otherwise wouldn't have had a pathway to the labour market. And then at the same time, it provides, as you've acknowledged, really essential and really important community services. In terms of the fundamentals of CE, I think it's one of the best schemes we have. I do acknowledge there are issues with it. I do acknowledge that we're having difficulties getting participants onto it, and I would like to see better supports for CE participants going into the future as well.
Well, Minister, look, I know that a lot of work has been done when you look at the rural social scheme and the eligibility for the TUS extended to persons in receipt of disability payments. There's the new flexibility to allow CE schemes to directly recruit eligible candidates to fill 30% of the places. But Minister, you have to be practical here now. The reason communities can't get people on CE schemes is because it doesn't pay them, first of all, because if you have to travel 20 miles or 15 miles to where that scheme is First of all, you're losing money, and I don't even know if it's about losing the money. What I feel is, when you have such a scheme, and I'm not saying that the scheme is not a great scheme, Minister, I'm saying the scheme is a good scheme, but the reason has to be, why is it not being, why are people not participating in it? Why are they not getting more money? And the reason is, it just doesn't work out for them. They are doing this extra work which they love. I only want to compliment everyone involved in it. In that scheme, they work. I know so many in my own community. They do so much work, but everyone I'm talking to lately, all the different areas, whether it's through, you know, like if it's any just whether it's like St Clair. Okay, I could name loads of people that have come to me looking for CE scheme workers and can't get them.
Deputy Staunton, you wanted to come in on this.
Thank you.
I think this scheme is good for the community and good for the participants. I would also obviously like to agree with the Minister. We'd all like to see more money being made available for the participants. Could I ask the Minister two questions? First of all, has any consideration been given to facilitate those who are at pension age actually also carrying on with the scheme? Many people over 66 would like to and are able to, but can't. And also, with respect to people who have refugee status, is there an extra emphasis being put now in encouraging people like that to get on the schemes? Because of the great work the government has done, we are virtually in full employment, less Concorla, and that's why lots of areas are finding it difficult to get participants for these schemes now. Thank you.
Yeah, look, I think we all welcome the work that CE schemes carry out, and it can be everything in relation to drug addiction services right through in relation to many pieces of work in the community. I think we need to review it from a point of view of strengthening it. I welcome what has been said here previously. I do think we need to look at the pension age question that Deputy Stanton has brought up, and beyond that, I think for us to make this entirely sustainable, we need to deal with the issue of CE supervisors' pay and conditions. And we all know that that's an ongoing issue, and we need an all-of-government response to actually deal with that.
1 minute for all of that. Okay, I'll have a go. We're being very practical, I think, about CE. There was a review published at the end of last year, but we're not stopping at that. So we're trying to increase the flow in. We're trying to retain the people that we have, and we're trying to stop the flow out as well. And we've taken policy measures in each of them three areas. And in terms of also broadening the pool of people as well, plans are also at an advanced stage for a new pilot scheme to extend CE eligibility to people who are qualified adults on a job seeker claim. The pension age question, we are looking at pretty much everything we can in terms of broadening the pool and retaining people. That's one of the ones we're slower to consider, to be honest, and I'll just be straight with you on that. On the refugee side of things, qualifying age for refugees I think is 18, so there's a broader qualifying criteria for refugees as well. But in short, we're looking at everything we can to broaden the pool, to get more people in, but to stem the flow out as well. I acknowledge the CE supervisor's question as well. My officials had exploratory meetings with union reps in September, and there's an agreement to have another meeting in the near future as well.
Question is there in relation to the feasibility of extending child benefit to children who are over 18 but who are still in full-time post-primary education. Is this something you've considered?
Gormaigut and Lascan Corla, and I propose taking questions 8, 29, 46 and 89 together, please, because they all relate to the same thing. Child benefit is a universal monthly payment made to families with children up to the age of 16 years. The payment continues to be paid in respect of children until their 18th birthday who are in full-time education, whether that is post-primary, post-leaving cert or third level. Payment up to age 18 is also made in respect of children who have a disability. Estimated expenditure on the scheme will be approximately €2.1 billion in 2022. In Budget 2023, I secured a significant social welfare package of over €2.1 billion. As part of that, one of my priorities was to provide support for families and children. People who are in receipt of child benefit will receive a cost of living double payment on the 1st of November 2022 and that will be made to approximately 638,000 families in respect of over 1.2 million children at an estimated cost of €170.4 million. Although the current arrangements for extending child benefit to age 18 were primarily intended to cover situations where a child is in full-time post-primary education, they are not, in fact, limited in this way, but are available in respect of children aged up to 18 in full-time education, including those in third level. The suggestion to extend the age limit but in doing so exclude those in further or higher education from what is generally a universal payment made, therefore presents difficulties. In addition, any such extension would need to be considered in terms of cost consequences. Separately, I should emphasise that for those on social welfare payments, an increase for a qualified child will be paid up to age 2022 or up to the end of the academic year in which he or she reaches 2022. This approach ensures targeted assistance that is directly linked to household income and thereby supports low-income families with older children participating in full-time education. So families on low incomes may be able to avail of a number of social welfare schemes that support children in full-time education until the age of 2022, including, as I mentioned, the increase for a qualified child, with primary social welfare payments, the working family payment for low-paid employees with children, and the back-to-school clothing and footwear allowance. These schemes provide targeted assistance that is directly linked to household income and thereby support low-income families with older children participating in full-time education. In addition to the budget measures specifically for families with children, such as the double child benefit payment, the €500 lump sum payment to recipients of the work and family payment, low-income families will also benefit from other budget measures such as the €12 increase in the weekly personal rate for recipients of the working age payment. In July, the back-to-school clothing and footwear allowance was increased by €100 for each eligible child under the scheme. This year, the amount paid for each qualified child aged 4 to 11 years is €260. The rate payable for each eligible child aged 12 and over is €385. Approximately 151,000 families have benefited from this measure in respect of over 262,000 children. Budget 2023 also provides a €40 weekly increase in the work and family payment income limits for families of all sizes from January at a cost of approximately €16.8 million in 2023. I've also provided for a €500 lump sum payment to all families in receipt of the payment in November 2022 at an estimated cost of €23 million. As I said, I've also provided for the increase for the qualified child, so that's gone up by €2 to €42 per week in the case of children under 12. And for children over 12, it's gone up by €2 to €50 per week. And these increases will take effect from January at an estimated cost of €30.4 million. Child benefit delivers a standard rate of €140 a month in respect of each child in a family. Similarly, the targeted payments mentioned above are paid in respect of each qualifying child, and the income limit associated with the work and family payment increases with increasing family size. In addition, in the case of twins, child benefit is paid at 1.5 times the normal monthly rate for each child. For triplets and other multiple births, child benefit is paid at double the normal monthly rate for each child. So you can see that there's been a lot of supports in this budget for families and children. The double payment of the child benefit in November, the autumn cost of living double payment paid to recipients of a range of schemes in October, including one-parent family payment and job seekers transitional payment recipients, Christmas bonus double payment to recipients of a range of schemes including one-parent family payment, €500 cost of living lump sum payment to all families in receipt of the work and family payment, and €400 lump sum payment to all fuel allowance recipients. So there's a lot in this, and that's not even talking about what Minister Harris has announced in his package.
Thanks very much, Minister, and thanks so much for outlining all of the supports and measures that you introduced this budget. which I think people are really grateful for, and I know have gone down really positively in my own community. So thank you for that level of investment. Quite interesting to hear you talk about 16 years of age as being the cut-off point for child benefit, and then you're extended beyond that once you're still in full-time education. And I suppose I wonder, was 16 years of age set when at a time a lot of people chose to leave school at 16 years of age? I started college myself at 17. I was part of a generation, many of whom were going to college at that age. Nowadays people are 18, often 19 going to college. And I suppose it's the fact that there are people who are 18 years of age who, because transition year is done so much more frequently, or who may have started school at 5 or 6 years of age, who are now in full-time post-primary education at 18 years of age. And I just think there is a gap there where we're not supporting those parents through that kind of transition. If they do go on to college, they may well be entitled to the SUSI grant, but there's probably only a few months, maybe 6 months, that those children, young people who are 18 years of age, aren't getting that child benefit. And I wonder, maybe that could be something that could be looked at or costed or modelled with a view to even just exploring the idea.
Thanks very much, Alaska and Corla, and good morning, Minister, and thank you very much for your response. I just want to lend my support to Deputy Higgins' proposal. I do think it's meritorious, and while I note the huge range of measures that the Minister has announced in this budget, and indeed the information that she's provided to the House, I do think there's a gap there. It's a very small gap, and it only affects probably less than half of Leaving Certificate students and their families, but it should be something that's borne in mind, because, as the Deputy has said, I think this scheme was most likely designed at a time when perhaps fourth year was not a thing in all schools and children perhaps started a little earlier. But I wish to just highlight the very welcome support for the 1.2 million children whose parents will receive a double payment. And I think when you are talking about an expansionary budget in your department, as has been seen, which is going to benefit over 639,000 families in this just one area, then it is something that should be welcome, particularly with the backdrop of the cost of living crisis. Thank you.
Firstly, Minister, thank you for the comprehensive response, and definitely there's such a wide range of supports, and they're very positive. Minister, when a person reaches 16, they need to confirm that they're in full-time education for it to be eligible. So clearly, full-time secondary school education is the threshold for it to be eligible. They continue to be in that same situation with the same costs throughout the Leaving Cert cycle, whether they're 16, 17, 18 or even 19. Similar costs, it won't be anything different. They won't have the opportunity to be working, many of them, and many of them will be so focused on the Leaving Cert anyway that they won't want to be earning or in employment. Have you looked at the numbers of people who have been who would be in this situation, whether they're just turned 18 or almost 19 and still doing the Leaving Cert, and the number of people that will be there and the cost that will be involved, because it would be a practical measure to support families. Remember, the cost hasn't really changed on the household throughout.
Minister to respond.
Thank you, deputies. Just to say, for those people who are on social welfare, an increase for a qualified child will be paid up to age 22 or up to the end of the academic year in which they reach 2022. To be fair, this approach ensures targeted assistance that is directly linked to household income and thereby supports low-income families with older children participating in full-time education. And I take the points that you're all making, deputies. You know, keeping a child in full-time education, it is an expensive task, but budgets are also about choices. We are providing €2.2 billion in supports between the various lump sum payments and the changes which will take effect from January. And it does represent the largest social protection budget in the history of the state. But even at that, we still can't do everything we want. And there are other things, of course, we'd like to do. But at the end of the day, government has to cut its cloth to measure. And I suppose what I prioritised in the budget, in the double payment of child benefit, that will support as I said, 639,000 families in respect of 1.2 million children, and that measure alone has a cost of 170 million, so that demonstrates the scale of the calls involved in any changes to child benefit. You know, I hear your point about if somebody is 18 and still in full-time second level education, if they go past the age of 18, if they're 19, they're still. I hear what you're saying there, but just if we increase or if we expand the child benefits currently in place, you know, it would have cost implications into the future. And you know, as I said, in Budget 2023, it was decided to target low-income families on a long-term basis through providing for the increases in the personal rates of payment and increases for the qualified child, as well as increases in the work and family payment income threshold. Can I just say also that Minister Harris has announced a comprehensive package in the budget to reduce the cost of third level education. The threshold for student contributions is 50% grant, has been expanded to 62,000. Student maintenance grants will increase in January. Interest so there's 30 million increase in funding to increase capacity for apprenticeships in 2023. So I think when you look at these things in the round, there's a lot of support out there to help both people, working families and those who are not in receipt of social welfare payments. But my job as Social Protection Minister is to target those that are least well off in our society. So when you look at all of the package that we've put together, I think it's a very comprehensive budget package.
Response as well. I think this really was a cost of living budget. It was aimed at targeting help towards people who needed it the most, and also providing universal assistance, because every family up and down the country is struggling with the increase in cost of living. Really good to hear you talk about those low-income families who receive the targeted support in terms of qualified adult or qualified child payment right up to the age of 23 once they're in full-time education. But I suppose a universal support measure could be to assist people during those few months where they may have an 18-year-old still in second level post-primary education. And I suppose I'm thinking in particular of the squeeze middle who would benefit from that. So I would ask that you may undertake some level of costings to see if this may be possible to include in next year's budget.
The measures and the focus on the lower income is very positive, and it's very constructive. I very much agree with you on it. Minister, not every household is on social welfare, and there are those that are just beyond the threshold as well, and they also feel the burden of costs. You have to make choices. Yes, you have to cut your cloth according to measure. But you have to measure to do that. And have you measured how many people would be involved in making this support available? Have you looked at what the cost would be? It's hugely important. You can't make an informed decision without having the figures available to you. You're really only looking at small numbers of people here, but have you actually measured it and put a figure on it? Because we feel it would definitely support many households where people are just turned 18 and are still not finished in Leaving Cert.
Minister Tooley.
Thank you. It's trying to establish, you know, if people are in full-time education or not. So that would be very, very hard for us to, you know, to know whether they are or not. If they're over 18 and they're still in full-time secondary education, just finding that data itself could take some time. I'm not sure where you'd go for it, because people have to declare themselves that their children are still in full-time education at age 16. Yeah, so they do it at 16. But I don't know. I look at deputies. I'm always willing to look at other ways where we can help people. So can I say to each one of you that I'm happy, you know, of course, to look at these things. I continue to look at different ways on how we can improve the supports we give to people. And I'm very conscious that there are, you know, people out there who receive no support other than the childcare or other than the child benefit support. But that's why in this budget that we're looking, and Minister O'Gorman's department, young families will benefit from the 25% reduction in childcare costs. A single person on 40,000 will be €800 better off per year as a result of the income tax changes, while a couple will be €1,600 better off following the budget changes this year. Next September, we'll have free school books in primary school. We have the free transport at the minute. So there's a lot in this budget to support working families, and I do think that's a positive thing. And as I said, I look and continue to review all the schemes that we have to see can we make them better. And each year you see more and more changes and more changes that are welcomed, and I'll continue to do that. But just to answer all of you that have raised this with me, I will look at it, so if that's fine. And thanks for raising it.
Now we're going to move on to question 11. Higgins.
Thanks very much, Lascan Corla. Minister, this question is in relation to providing a timeframe for the introduction of the cost of living payments announced in the budget. They've actually probably been publicised since this question has gone down, but maybe you'd talk us through that, please.
And I propose taking questions 11, 50, 60, 74 and 82 together. In response to the ongoing cost of living pressures as part of Budget 2023, I secured over €2.1 billion in new measures, the largest social protection package in the history of the state. Recognising that autumn-winter is the most expensive time of the year for many households, and rather than waiting until the new year, €1.1 billion of this package has been targeted to provide for a wide range of lump sum payments which will be paid out in the coming months. These payments are in addition to a wide range of increases that will come into effect from January. My department is currently working on putting in place the necessary IT systems and administrative processes to administer the various lump sum payments. The cost of living supports recently announced will be paid on the following dates. The autumn cost of living double-week payment to most weekly social protection schemes will be paid during the week commencing the 17th of October. So that's next week. So the double payment is next week. That's the first one. The double payment of child benefit to support families with children will be paid alongside the regular child benefit that's due to be paid on the 1st of November. So for families who receive child benefit, they get a double payment on the 1st of November. And the following cost of living measures will be paid during the week commencing the 14th of November. So there's going to be a €400 lump sum fuel allowance payment to all households receiving the fuel allowance, a €200 lump sum payment for pensioners and people with a disability receiving the living alone allowance, a €500 lump sum payment to all families in receipt of the working family payment, and a €500 lump sum payment to those on disability allowance, blind pension and invalidity pension. A €500 lump sum payment will be paid to those in receipt of the Carer Support Grant during the week commencing the 21st of November 2022. And in addition, a 100% Christmas bonus will be paid to long-term social welfare recipients during the week beginning the 5th of December. In addition to these measures in 2022, I also announced a series of measures as part of Budget 2023 which take effect in January. And these include a €12 increase which will be provided on weekly payments, with additional increases to those people with qualified adults. An increase in the income thresholds on work and family payment by €40 across the board. This will benefit working families on the payment by up to €24 per week. A significant increase in the income threshold for over 70s. From January, the 1st of January, it will be €500 for a single person and €1,000 for a couple. So that means they can earn up to €500 a week for single and €1,000 for a couple per week. And in addition, I'm improving the standard fuel allowance means test for the scheme, so this will be for the under 70s, by raising the means limit from €120 to €200 above the contributory pension rate. So you'll be able to earn €200 above the contributory pension rate from the 1st of January, and it won't affect your means. It won't affect it'll mean that you know, it's taken into account when they're assessing the fuel allowance. Half-rate carers allowance payments and disablement benefit will no longer be assessed in the fuel allowance means test, and this is something that has been brought up with me during the year, and like that I've changed it, so that's an improvement. I'm raising the under 12 rate by €2 to €42 for a child under 12, and this is for the qualified child payment, and by €2 for a child over 12, so I'm bringing that rate up to €50 per week. And over the last 3 budgets, we have now increased the under 12 rate by €6 and the over 12 rate by €10. So that's in the last 3 budgets. I also announced that we will amend these rules so parents can qualify for domiciliary care allowance when babies do not leave hospital but who otherwise would have qualified for the payment. So there was a situation there where you had to have your child at home before you would qualify for the domiciliary care allowance, where, you know, for some people it's a very, very difficult time where you have a child in hospital and there's a lot of extra expense. So we're actually allowing them, even if the child has never been able to come home, unfortunately, we're going to let them qualify for the domiciliary care allowance. And I'm increasing the rate of payment for the domiciliary care allowance. It's a monthly payment from €309.50 to €330 per month. I'm also increasing the earnings disregard on disability allowance to €165 per week to allow those people with disabilities who can work to earn more and to retain their social welfare payment. And I think that's a very important measure, because there are some people there, and it would be, you know, it might be helpful for them to work part-time. So it means they can still keep their payment and do some work, and I'd encourage them to look at that if they can. The Government also announced a range of other measures to support households throughout the winter period. In particular, 3 further energy credits totalling €600 will be paid to all households, with the first of these being paid before the end of the year. And thank you.
For that really comprehensive response. It's been an absolutely historic budget, and as you say, it's been the largest ever package to get money back into people's pockets, and I think that's been really welcomed by an awful lot of people. I think you've done a great job at supporting people on low incomes who need help and support and intervention the most. And you've also really catered for the squeezed middle, who once considered to have decent jobs and decent wages are now finding that they're struggling to make ends meet. And I suppose, I think this budget and the welfare announcements that you've made there, the €2.1 billion, really actually achieves that. I have had a couple of constituents in touch with me who are getting letters at this point now asking for a review of their circumstances before they receive any payments. This might be something that happens every couple of years, I'm not sure, or maybe you could clarify if it's in relation to this in particular. And I also just wanted to acknowledge the changes you made around the fuel allowance eligibility criteria and the half rate for carers and the disability payments not being taken into account for means test. They are issues that I raised with you in this chamber, and it's fantastic to see, Minister, that you take on board so much of the feedback you get in this chamber and make it happen, because that's what changes people's circumstances at home.
Thanks, Minister. Well done on the budget and on what you've done here. It's going to make a huge difference to a lot of people. Just 2 points. First of all, are you doing anything to ensure that people know what they're entitled to? With the changes that have come in, some of them are quite complicated and they may have to apply and may not know that. So is there an information leaflets been given out or whatever to people? And the second question is, it strikes me that a lot of people will be getting a lot of cash. And will the Minister ensure that people will be made aware that they can lodge to the bank, to their bank account through the post office, rather than carrying a lot of cash home? And it's one thing that strikes me. It's great to see people getting all this money, but if they have it in cash, especially older people, vulnerable people, people with disabilities, it can actually lead to them being vulnerable to robbery and so forth. So maybe they can lodge it in the post office or lodge it in their bank account, but through the post office. Some people don't realise they can do that, and they travel to the bank, which may be far away now, not knowing they can do it through the post office. Thank you.
Minister, first. You're not in on this group question? No, you'll come in on the next one. Minister.
Okay, thank you. Well, just on the issue of cash, and I do understand that, you know, people will be getting a number of, for those who collect it in their post office, I'd say to them, you know, either lodge it into their bank account, or I'd say to them, go to their credit union and put it in there. That's the place to put it, and take it out when you need it. Don't try, you know, and it's the best way you can manage it. And I know from working in a credit union, there's many's a person got extra money, and the sensible people went in and put it in the credit union and took it out when they needed it. And most credit unions have ATM machines now as well, so that's where I'd be telling them to go with it. Now, the review of the means test. You're right, Deputy. And these, I do listen to you here. You know, I did listen, and there's a load of things raised with me during the year. So I was glad I was able to take some of those views right across the House now on board and make the difference. You talked about the review of when there's continual reviews always taking place. Like, we do review payments because people's circumstances change, and we need to have the up-to-date information because we have limited resources. We wanted to target at those most in need, and if people's circumstances do change, and if they win the lotto, they're not, you know what I mean, they need to make the social protection aware of the changed circumstances. But there are reviews ongoing all the time. And that's part of our control measures as well, to make sure that when people are receiving the allowances, that they are entitled to them, and that they need them, and that's the part of social welfare, and it's important that we do carry out those checks and balances. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Minister, and thanks for that explanation in relation to reviews as well. As he said, a constituent of mine has been in touch on this. She's working 2 part-time jobs. They're very seasonal. She's a lone parent, and I suppose in situations like hers, we absolutely, in all situations, we have to have control measures and means tested. But I do hope that our means test won't be mean enough to disencourage people to go out and work and better their lives and their circumstances. And just to thank you very much for all of what you've done. I think the increased payments and the lump sums are going to be really, really welcome this winter. I agree with Deputy Stanton when it comes to information campaigns, and I'd love to know how we're reaching out to people who may not have been eligible for the likes of fuel allowance, who are likely now to become eligible, to make sure that they're getting that information, they know that the entitlement has changed, and to know that they should be applying for it. I'm doing a lot of work with my senior citizens groups in Lucan and Clondalkin to make sure that word gets out there, but I'd love to get an update on what the department is doing nationwide.
Deputy Staunton. Deputy Staunton.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, there will be a campaign, of course, of telling people what they're entitled to and what they should be applying for. And just to say, in terms of the expanded fuel allowance, we hope to target an additional 81,000 homes. You know, with the changes to the means test for the over 70s, and I would say to people, we're putting, just in case they're wondering now on this, we're putting together the systems. We have to change our systems to do that, and we're putting together an application form, and we hope to have that ready. It could be the end of the year, early next year, but they will get it from the 1st of January. So if they don't get the money immediately, it'll be backdated to the 1st of January. So we're doing everything we can. And I have to say, the staff in social protection, they have done tremendous work over the last number of years. We have had the crisis, or the pandemic, and now the cost of living crisis. There's a lot of payments that we need to get out here before the end of the year, and we want to do them in the way that people get them and there's no hiccups, because we have to be careful that our IT systems and our programmes are written properly so that they're secure and they're safe. So it's you know, it's a process that needs attention. But we will inform people. I was out in Dublin in Tala yesterday.
We're over time, and I'm just trying to squeeze in one last. There's just 2 minutes left, Minister. Deputy Curran, if you want to take question 12, but there's just 2 minutes.
Yeah, Gurmagh, last King Court at the time is fine. Minister, this is to ask you in relation to the €12 increases which will kick in January for all social welfare rates across the board, and in light of that, the inadequacy that is there based on the minimum essential standard of living, which I've raised with you many, many times. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. And as you know, I announced on Budget Day that the Government will spend over €2.1 billion on social protection measures, including over €880 million, in order to provide for a €12 increase in the weekly rate of social welfare payments from January 2023. This supports both pensioners and those of working age and includes a proportionate increase for qualified adults. This is the largest social welfare package in the history of the state. The rate increase is accompanied by a wide range of additional measures and lump sum payments this year to social welfare customers taken together from any household types. The combination effectively matches or exceeds inflation. For example, a pensioner living alone will receive over €1,600 in additional payments and energy credits over the next 12 months compared to the 12 months just past. That's the equivalent to an increase of about €31 per week. Taking another example, a person with a disability living alone will benefit by about €1,850, an increase of about 14%, which is worth €36 per week. In general, most welfare recipients, taking into account the one-off measures, the energy credits and the underlying rate increase, will be better off by about 10% over the next 12 months compared to the 12 months past. So year on year, they're better off by 10%. Combining one-off measures with underlying rate increases is a prudent, targeted approach. In its post-budget analysis, the ESRI stated that welfare increases in 2022 and 2023, together with one-off measures, are large enough to leave the lowest income households better off on average than they would have been had welfare payments risen in line with inflation both this year and next. I am satisfied that the total social welfare budget package for 2023 has been designed to protect the most vulnerable in society. As we have done to date, the Government will continue to monitor the situation closely and will respond again when necessary.
Deputy.
Just briefly, just to say that I really wish we could see a commitment by Government to get to the minimum essential standard of living, rather than this haggling which we heard just before the budget. Might be a tenner, might be 15, might fall in the middle. I think we need and we should be moving to provide certainty to social welfare recipients to go to the MESL. Thank you.
I think we'll have to leave the last word to the Minister.
Okay, well, one of the benefits of the work of the Vincentian Messel Research Centre is that it provides an analysis of the different levels of income needed for a wide range of household types, including the different costs. For example, the latest Messel annual update shows the differences in the cost of meeting household needs in urban and rural areas. For a start, differentiating social welfare payment rates based on location would be problematic. For these reasons, while not used as a benchmark in itself, the work of the Vincentian Messel Research Centre at the Society of the Vincent de Paul and previously the Vincentian Partnership for Social Justice has been and will continue to be a valuable input into the policy making process, and we have taken on board a good number of their recommendations.
Thanks, Minister.
Thank you.
That concludes